Welcome to this episode of Sewing 101. In this episode, we're going to make a really cool dog jacket for a larger dog, and it's reversible, so the dog will have actually two vests to wear. This project's being done at the request of some of my friends who said that they would like to know how I've made jackets for my dogs through the years. I've made jackets for dogs for a long time. It's kind of a hobby that I have of trying to customize things. And in my neighborhood, when someone gets a new dog, we have dog showers. And so I'll make something for it, sometimes out of fabric, sometimes I knit a sweater. I really like doing that. And I don't make clothing for humans, but I like making it for dogs because they rarely complain about the fit or the quality. So why don't we get started by looking over the supplies that we're going to need for this project. Let's talk about the fabric first. You can get two different types of fabrics. It kind of helps if they're complementary, but they don't have to be because you only see one side at a time on this vest. It hides the other side pretty well. I chose fabrics that could be washed easily, and I washed them ahead of time so that they would be pre-shrunk before I started the project. I got some complementary thread. This will be on both sides and it works for both sides. And then of course a bobbin to go with that. Velcro, that will be used on the front closure of the vest. Now we're going to make our own pattern. Now you can do that by measuring the dog, which is what we're going to do, or if you already have a jacket that you really like, you can use that and just kind of trace around it to be the pattern that you want to use for this one. You need a measuring tape because we're going to use that when we measure the dog. I got a little notepad here so they can write down what the dog measures. And then for a final pattern, I make it out of fabric, and this is a denim, a white denim fabric. It doesn't really matter, and I always mark it for which dog it's for. And it looks like, to me, it looks like those bibs you wear at the lobster places when you get lobster. But that's the shape that we're going to make it, and I'm going to tell you how to do that for your dog so it's a custom fit. And then, of course, you know, your scissors and your pins and your sewing machine. Now, let's get started. Our model for this project is a golden Labrador retriever named Max. Max is the dog of my friend Stacy, who's also a neighbor. The first measurement we take will be of Max's neck. Notice I'm not measuring him at his collar line. I'm measuring him lower where the jacket will actually fit. Of course, the order of where you measure doesn't matter, but next I measure Max's back, and that's from where the jacket begins up at the top of the neck down to the bottom where I want it to go on the back. This measurement shows that I'm going to measure from the top of the back down to the side where I would like the jacket to end. I'm going to take just a couple of measurements and make sure that they are consistent along the back. The last measurement I'm taking is the one around Max's chest. This tells me the maximum size of the dog, and also it tells me how long my strap will need to be. Now that we have Max's measurements, we can make our first copy of the pattern. I do it on paper so that I can make as many mistakes as I want and clean it up. Remember that the length that we wanted on Max is 15 inches. That is from the area that we want. I'm going to consider this the back. That's from the area we want the vest to end on his back, and this will represent his neckline. All right, the next measurement is his neck was 25 inches around, and so we're going to go from this mark here, and we're going to go at approximately a 45-degree angle from that mark And because it was 25, that means half of that is 12 and a half. Remember, I'm only making half of the pattern right now. I'll make the full one on the fabric. And then I want to add 2.5 inches for to have enough room for the closure. So there's 1, 2, 2.5 right here. So in Max's case, that's actually 15 by 15. I don't know if that'll work out for every dog, but maybe that's proportional. The next measurement is going to be from the back down to where we said we wanted the vest to fit along the side of the dog, and that's 8 inches. All right, so now I have this mark. This basically marks the end. There's the neck, and I have the closure for the neck out here. So since this is here, I'm going to draw here, and I'm going to go up like that so that it meets. It's not that hard of a line to draw. You see it there. And then I want to have it also come to my neckline, and I'm going to have it come up just a little bit right there. All right. If it helps you visually, you can go ahead and draw a line there. And then from here, I'm going to go out to this point. That's going to be the most difficult line that you have to make, because what you got to do is kind of envision the dog, and it's going to kind of curve out to that line, curve back here, go like that. Now I'm looking at that, and I may actually want to adjust that and say, well, I would rather it curve a little bit more, but I still want to retain my length. So when I do my final pattern, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to cut this out, and I'm going to, before I cut fabric or anything crazy, I'm going to hold this against Max and see how it looks on him. I'm going to make any adjustments. I could actually, if I wanted to, cut, you know, out to here or whatever, and but this will be my first draft of a pattern. So don't be scared. You can't really screw this up too bad. If you want to make a couple of versions because you think, well, was that neck longer, or do I want to see this longer? Make a couple of versions and then go back to the dog, because it's a custom piece for Max and we want it to fit him very well. So once I cut out the paper pattern, I took it back to Max. I held it there to see how it was going to fit, and you could pretty much see that it was going to work and that I could now move on to the next step. So after going back and forth, I think it only took me about 2 or 3 times to fit on Max before I came up with my final design for using the paper, and then I'm ready to go on the fabric. One of the things that I thought was kind of cute is this this shape actually looks like kind of an animal, you know, of some sort, maybe a dinosaur or something. But anyway, this will make my fabric pattern. And at this point, if you want to just use the paper one, that's okay, you know, because you can use it over and over again and save yourself some fabric and some steps. I just find it really handy to have this in a fabric form for use over and over again. If you do that, mark on it who it's for, what it's for, but paper kind of doesn't last as long as the fabric. This fabric, of course, is folded because it needs to be the whole vest. Although, again, so many options. I mean, don't limit yourself. And if you think of a better idea than what I've got here, my goodness, use it. But the other thing is you could use a single piece of fabric for your fabric pattern and then just fold your final fabric, and that would be kind of the best of both worlds, because you would use a minimal amount of fabric for your pattern, and but you would have the pattern in fabric. So whatever you want to do, but this is your final customized pattern for your dog. In this step, I've taken the cutout cloth pattern and I've gone back to Max just one more time to make sure that it's going to work out okay before I go to my final fabric, and I make sure that the closure fits correctly and that it fits all the way down the dog. I also take this opportunity to mark where I'm going to be putting the straps for the vest. I've finished cutting out the vest using the pattern, and remember, it should look like this. While it's still on the pattern, it should have about 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't need to be perfect around the outside of the pattern in order to create a seam allowance. Now I've removed all of the pins, but before I removed the pattern from the fabric, I marked here, because remember, that's where we're going to have straps and I don't want to lose that marker. And so I've marked on both sides and on both of the fabric types where I want to put that strap when I sew the pieces together. With that in place, I had some extra material, which you usually do when you're sewing. I'm going to remove the pattern. That's going to be one side of our vest. And remember, this is the side that will be on the outside showing. And this is also one of the pieces that will be on the outside showing. And I thought, you know, that's pretty fabric, but it's a little plain. So I created out of the extra fabric some pockets that I'm going to have kind of actually what I'm going to do so that I know how to position them, I'm going to fold my vest in half, just like that. That way I'll be able to know that my pockets are positioned exactly in the same position on both sides. And so that's probably going to be a good base placement. I want it to be straight with the back here. I also want to have plenty of room for the strap and for the seam binding. So I think that's going to be a really nice size pocket. Now I could pin it in order to sew it, but I really like to use something called Steam-A-Seam, and it's just an adhesive, so you can just tear off pieces that you need. And I'll be doing this on the ironing board, but you can put a piece in there, you can press it. I'll do that all the way around that surface, and it will adhere it and actually strengthen the bond, and then I'll stitch it to make a final bond with the fabric, between the two fabrics, and then I'll have a nice little pocket. I might even make a little divider here so that the pocket actually has two. You could have maybe a poo bag in one and a treat for later. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do to embellish the outside before I sew the two sides together. So let me finish that, and then what we'll do is show how to put the strap on so that this vest will have a fastener for the dog. You can buy strapping at the fabric store to use to secure the vest onto the dog, but what I've done in this case is I had an extra collar. Again, I have a bunch of these, and it has that webbing, and so I'm just going to use this collar, and I cut it. I cut this end off of it. Look, this is you know, I keep these together so that I don't lose them until I'm ready to secure it onto the other side. But what I've found is that if I don't do something here, these ends ravel. So they're nylon and they melt pretty darn easily. So I'm going to try to just kind of cauterize or the ends of it. I don't want to catch it on fire, but it actually, here, I'm going to move this closer to the camera. It actually will just kind of melt shut, and that will keep it raveling, because it left alone, that'll do it. It could ravel, you know, and cause problems in being secure to the piece, and I don't want that. So now we're ready to start putting the two pieces of the vest together to stitch. So that means my next step is going to be putting the straps on. Now notice that I didn't cut the strap that I'm using in half, and the reason I didn't is I kind of want this on the side of the dog so that it's easy to snap into place, and so you're not reaching around the dog to try to snap it. So that's why, if you're wondering, well, why isn't it cut in half, that's the reason. Now, so this one will go here, and so I'm going to take my pin and pin it in place. And then the other one will go on the other side. And I don't want to catch the other one, you know, sewing it accidentally. So what I'm going to do is actually make use out of the pocket that I made and put this in the pocket while I secure this part. Now I'm going to kind of eyeball it one more time to make sure that they are opposite each other, and because this is going to be a stressed area because of it may tug a little bit on the dog, I'm going to sew these straps down first before I put the two right sides together and sew the entire vest together. So let me go ahead and tack those together, and to do that, all I'm going to do is take my sewing machine and just go back and forth a couple of times to secure that. And then when I'm going to I'm not going to make it as deep as I am the seam so that it doesn't show. So I want to make this whole thing really secure. You never know what Max might be doing. He likes to chase his ball a lot. I want this as flat as possible. I've already matched the bottom. So all I have to do is bring it up, match the two sides together, smooth them out. They should, because they were cut together, match just about perfectly. And now I will pin it together so that I can take it to the sewing machine and join them. Now when I sew it, remember, I'm going to keep an area down here at the bottom open so that I can turn it to the right sides. So let's pin it and then stitch it. I've decided to leave this bottom portion. I'm going to leave about this much of it open for the turn when I'm done stitching. So that means I'm going to start my stitching right here, and I'm going to go all the way around the piece, following all of the curves and the straps for the front and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm just about ready to do now. Got the piece stitched all the way around like we planned. And now it's time to turn it right side out. I always kind of get excited about this part because it's when you start really seeing the project come together. Okay, I sewed around all of the edges. Remember, I left an opening and then turned the piece so that my right sides are now facing out. And as much as I could, I made sure that the seams looked good. And so the next step is to press it so that it looks really good, because I'm going to go along and top stitch the edge, and that'll give it a nice more professional look, and it won't slide around to where you can see one side on the other side. It'll make it so that it always has a crisp look on both sides. Okay, so I'm done pressing it. You can see already that just pressing it gives it a more, crisp and professional look. I got a little piece of lint right there. We'll take care of that. I'm going to turn off my iron, and the next step is to top stitch all the way around, and that really helps it look professional. So let's go do that right now. The only part that I pinned is that part where I pressed it, but it was open for the turning. Other than that, I don't have to pin anything, and I'm ready to sew. I think I'll start down here on the bottom where I pinned it. Now, I want to top stitch it a little less than a quarter, and I'm just going to eyeball that with keeping that quilting foot that has the 1/4 inch measurement on it. I'm just going to kind of pick a spot and do an inside stitch all the way around the piece. The top stitching is all done. Isn't that great? And now we're going to apply some Velcro for the neck opening to keep that secure. I'm trying this new Velcro. I've never tried it before. You know how usually you get 2 pieces and one is sticks to the other piece, and they're different. Well, this Velcro is touted as being snag free, and it only comes in 1 piece. But the beauty of that is that it sticks to itself. So you don't have to have the 2 separate pieces and that sort of thing. And we'll see how it works. This will be my first project with it. So I can't vouch for it yet, but I'm hoping it works well. We don't need a real tight closure there at the neck. It's more around the waist that'll get stressed. So the dog is going to have its head through there, and this will cross over in the front. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll move this down a little bit. So that'll be the measurement of my Velcro. And I'm going to try 1 or 2 pieces. I think I'm going to feel more secure, especially with this new type of having 2 pieces on each side for the closing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 pieces basically of this Velcro strip, and then sew 2 pieces, well, actually 2 pieces here and 2 pieces here, so that just demonstrate this a little bit. So they'll just 2 pieces there, 2 pieces here, so that when this closes either way, with the plaid out or the red out, it'll close like that. And the Velcro will hold it. Let's hope. The Velcro pieces are now in place, and let me show you. Remember, these were 2 distinct, actually 4 distinct different pieces, and the way I sewed this, and it's much easier to see it on this, is that I went around all 4 of them like in a box, and then I made an X with a stitch, doubled over, and then came this way, and that's keeping that secure. So the way that this works is, if it's on the dog this way, no problem. It goes together like that, and frankly, I can just, and then the side straps will hook, and then if the other side is it looks like a magic trick. If the other side is showing, then it'll look like this. I can't wait to try it on Max and see how it looks and see if he likes it. Well, here we are, trying on the vest on Max. He looks a little apprehensive, but then he shows me that he likes the red side with the pockets, as well as the plaid side. He really likes that side. And finally, it seems like he's pretty darn proud of his new jacket. There you go, Max, such a good boy.
So that's it for this episode of Sewing 101. I hope you found it helpful and that you have the best looking dog in the neighborhood after you're done. And for now, let's end this segment by helping Max do what he does best. Come on, Max, go! Good boy, Max, that was so cute.